Adam though.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, there's 7. Okay, my name is Danielle Svanstrom, and this is my demonstration speech on wine tasting. And here's my 7 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, Adam is gonna videotape this for me.
Full of numbers.
Okay. Can you see my props? It's important. Okay. Have you ever been to a dinner party and been asked to open a bottle of wine, but were embarrassed because you didn't know how? Or felt out of place when a conversation turned to wine and you had nothing to contribute? Sometimes wine can feel intimidating, but it doesn't have to. My husband and I are both active members in numerous wine clubs around the state of Wisconsin. Initially, when these clubs would meet, I would feel out of place and overwhelmed. After many years, meetings, and many bottles of wine, I am here to share a few tips with you on wine tasting. From opening the bottle to the components that make a nice balanced wine, this presentation will give you the tools you need to be a little more confident from bottle to glass. So for this tasting, we will need 3 things: a bottle of wine, a glass to drink out of, and a bar key. I always recommend a wine glass with a stem. Our hands radiate heat, so if you're holding the glass by the bulb or drinking out of a glass without a stem, you're warming the wine. A stem also allows you to hold the glass without warming it, and it makes it much easier to swirl the wine. Okay, so now that we have the tools we need, let's get started. First, we'll be opening the bottle of wine. So for that, we're gonna need our bar key. And we're gonna use the tool that most people neglect, which is the little knife. Lots of people just like to rip the foil out, but we're gonna use this little knife, and you're gonna apply pressure right underneath the first lip, and you're gonna rotate the bottle while applying pressure. And this is gonna allow you to peel the top off, and this makes for a really nice presentation. You don't have any foil hanging off, so you have a nice presentation. Next, we're gonna close the knife, use the corkscrew, find the middle of the cork, apply pressure, and rotate the cork. Now, I like to go about 3/4 of the way down, or until I get to about the second lever. And then you're just going to apply pressure and pull up on the cork. Sometimes, oh, see, I did it just right. It hangs in a little and you just gotta pull. And there you go. Okay, so now we're on to the tasting of the wine. First step in tasting, obviously, is to pour. For a tasting purpose, we're only gonna have about 1 to 2 ounces of wine in the glass. So I'll go ahead and pour the wine. That's a good amount right there for a tasting. So the first thing we're gonna do when tasting wine is to actually just look at it. The 2 things we're looking for are clarity and color density. Clarity is very important in wine. When you look at your wine, you don't want to see anything floating, you don't want to see anything cloudy. Every bottle we buy from the store, we want to be clear. There's a couple instances where somebody will purposely not filter a wine, or somebody's made a natural wine, there might be some sediment, or it might be cloudy. But if you open one from the grocery store, you want it to be clear. The second thing we're going to look at is color density. Color density can teach you a lot about the type of wine it is. If it's lighter, it's a Pinot Noir or one of the lighter wines, and the darker ones would be in Zinfandel. So you can tell a lot about what kind of wine it is just by looking at it. And to check the color density, you're going to turn your wine sideways without spilling it, and you can hold a white piece of paper under it. And if you can read the letters through, it's a lighter wine. And if you can't, it's a heavier wine. So this one was darker, and this is actually a blend of darker varietals. So that's the, yeah. Okay, so the second step in wine tasting is smelling. The smell of wine is also known as the aroma, and it will exhibit characteristics that usually fall into 4 categories. The first category we're going to talk about are earthy tones. Some examples of earthy tones would be dirt, mushrooms, grass. The second category is floral. Some of these examples are rose and honeysuckle. Third A few samples of that would be citrus, cherry, and blueberry. And the fourth category is oak. Some wines are aged in oak barrels, leaving oak aromas in the wine. Some examples of the smell are vanilla or allspice. So to smell the wine, the first thing we need to do is swirl it. Swirling it opens up the wine and helps release the aroma. So we'll give it a nice swirl. And to smell wine, we're going to stick our nose right into the glass. Take a couple sniffs in, and then let that process and see if you can pick up any of those tones that we just talked about. I think this wine smells pretty fruity. It smells cherry, maybe a little tobacco flavor or aroma. So it's pretty fun. The same bottle of wine could warrant a bunch of different people's smells. So it's a fun thing to do. So now we're on to the fun part. After we've looked at it, smelled it, now we can taste it. So to taste wine, you're going to put a little bit into your mouth, hold it there, swish it around. I've seen people gargle it. I'm not going to do that. I don't recommend that, but you really want to hold it in your mouth for a little while and get the feel. So some of the things we're looking for when we're tasting the wine, or some of the components that make up wine that you'll be looking for when tasting are: 1, sugar levels. Is the wine sweet or is it dry tasting? Acidity levels. Does this wine make your mouth water? Tannins. If you're a tea drinker and you've ever oversteeped your tea, that's tannins. And lastly, alcohol. If there's too much alcohol, it will overpower the wine. For a good wine, all these components need to work together and balance each other out. I think this is a fairly balanced wine. So remember, when tasting wine, there is a difference between a wine that's made poorly and a wine you just don't like. The fun part of wine is that everyone will have different opinions and get different things from the wine. I hope that you feel more confident, and remember, your taste is your own opinion. I will leave you with this quote from Roger Scruton. Wine is not just an object of pleasure, but an object of knowledge, and the pleasure depends on the knowledge. Cheers.
Yay.